The Killing is the third film from director Stanley Kubrick. It was released in 1956, and I gotta say, this is the first time Kubrick has really shown that greatness that he would go on to be. Here, he hits his stride and he reveals himself to be a talent. It's not perfect, but it is pretty damn good. The Killing is about a heist of a racetrack, a horse racing track, and this guy, played by Sterling Hayden, he puts this plan in motion using several people who work at the track. One of them is a cop, he gets him in on it. He pulls together this band of people to pull off this really elaborate heist. It all kind of falls apart when this woman, played by Windsor, who is the wife of one of the guys that he's recruited, gets wind of it. Basically, her husband is a bit of a pushover. She's got him wrapped around her little finger and she pulls some information from him. She doesn't love him, she's actually having an affair with someone else, and when she tells that someone else, that's when everything starts to fall apart. First, I'll just get into the negative. Like I say, this isn't a perfect film, and there isn't that much that is really negative to speak of, so we may as well just get it out of the way. First one, and the big one for me, is the narration. Now, apparently, Kubrick didn't want the narration. This was at the studio's insistence. They wanted him to put the narration in there. I hate it. It really doesn't need to be in there. Half the time it's giving us information that, quite frankly, we don't need. We don't need to know what time a certain character went through a particular door and this, that and the other. It's pointless. The thing is, we had this stuff in Kubrick's first two movies, and I didn't like it there either. So yeah, just how true it is about the studio's insistence, I don't know. But either way, whether it was Kubrick, whether it was the studio, it sucks. Another negative is this character of Maurice, who's basically a muscle man, and he sends him in as a distraction to start a fight, basically, with all the security men. I didn't particularly like the way that fight was shot. Given just how visceral some of the action was in Kubrick's first two films, if those films had any faults, it wasn't with the action. There's some real visceral, hard-hitting, for its time, action sequences there. So when I knew this fight was going to happen throughout the film, and when it kicked off, it was a little bit of an anticlimax, because like I say, I was going off what I'd seen in his other work, and I was thinking this should be a pretty impressive visceral fight scene, and it wasn't. And the character of Maurice himself, I must say, I could not understand a word he was saying. Seriously, I really had to pay close attention whenever this guy was speaking. He just kind of mumbles everything that he's saying, and it's kind of thick accent, and it's just, that's literally what it was like. And I'm like, what is this guy saying? I can't just speak clearly. They're my three main negatives of the film. Everything else is pretty much spot on. First of all, the way the film is shot, the photography on this is beautiful. Kubrick has full control now over his blocking. Remember his first film, he had some blocking issues that were a bit off there. He'd kind of done a lot better in his second. Here, yeah, you can tell he's in command, you can tell he understands everything about that process. He's got a grip on it, and it really shows. Especially in scenes in which you've got all these men together. There's one scene in particular when we kind of first see them all together. They're sat around this table. There's a bit of light coming from above, but I really love the way that's lit, and also the way that it's blocked, the way that the framing is done. It feels natural, and it's hard to do that, when you've got 5-6 guys in a room all talking to each other, knowing where to put the camera, eye lines, things like that. It can get very complicated. Here, he just nails it. The group of characters as well that are in this film are all very distinct. They all get their moment, so to speak. You feel they're fully fleshed out, fully rounded characters. And they're all performed really well. I don't know most of these actors, to be honest. They're not exactly from my era, but yeah, I like what they do. I like what they bring. Elisha Cook Jr. as the put-upon husband, George Petty, is very good, it must be said. He's a character that I don't particularly like fairly early on from when he's introduced, but because of how put upon he is, how he lets his wife essentially walk all over him, and I love those scenes between him and his wife, like the dialogue between them. You see the way that she unravels him, the way that like she sneakily just turns the conversation around, and she's so kind of blasé about the way that she treats him, the way that she obviously doesn't love him, and then as soon as there is the talk of money, because he kind of lets this heist, the information about this heist slip, to try and impress her, to try and show her that they will have money soon. And you see her turn on a dime, just like really fast. All of a sudden she's all over him, but you see the way she worms her way around him, and he just falls for it, hook, line and sinker. And that's what makes me dislike him. He's a sad, pathetic kind of man, with no backbone, no spine. And that's the way it's meant to be. You shouldn't like this guy. This is the first film by Kubrick where he took it from another source. It comes from a novel. He has another writer on to help him with dialogue, and I think that is a very good choice on his part, because like I say, as his two previous films showed, it wasn't his strong point, particularly at this stage in his career at any rate. I know later on he would go on to write the dialogue in his scripts and do a much better job of it, but yeah, here I'm glad he brings someone on to help. Just could have done with losing that voiceover. There's something that happens towards the end of the film, like literally in the last kind of 5-10 minutes. After this heist has gone on, a lot of stuff has gone down, a lot of stuff has fallen apart, but someone is, kind of gets away towards the end, and something happens, which I don't want to go into in case you've not seen the film. But when it happens, at first I was like, oh, that's one, a bit contrived or convenient or whatever. But then as it's unfolding, as those events kind of are unfolding, I suddenly found myself laughing at it, the ridiculousness of it. And I think you're meant to, that's the point. It is a ridiculous situation, and the main character sees that as well. The main character kind of, he recognises the situation that he's in, and it's almost like justice from above kind of being worked out. I thought it worked really well. It was humorous, but also made a bit of a serious statement about the whole crime doesn't pay and all that kind of stuff. Sterling Hayden is very good as the central character, Johnny Clay. His delivery is super fast, so you've got to kind of pay attention to keep up with what he's saying. But the way he outlays the plan and all that, and the way it's constructed, it's quite good. If you like heist movies, if you like smart heist movies, in which you see them come together and build each part of the plan, and then towards the end you see it unfold. If you like all that kind of stuff, then you should watch this film. There is a mask that his character uses as well during the heist that really reminds me of the mask that the Joker uses in The Dark Knight during that opening, and I do wonder if Christopher Nolan drew some inspiration for that mask from this, because it goes without saying he has drawn a lot of inspiration from Kubrick over the years, and the more Kubrick films I watch, the more I see that. Another influence on Nolan that I see here as well is the non-linear narrative. We keep jumping forwards and backwards in time just to see, because you've got these 5 different characters and we're trying to get to see their role in each of it, we kind of keep jumping back. So we'll go back to a moment, play it forward, then go back, jump to another character and play it forward. If you look at like Nolan, well, most of Nolan's career, he's done that. He's played with time, and again, some more inspiration there from Kubrick. The film does a really good job of building tension as well. As the heist kicks off and things get into gear, you really don't know which way it's going to go and who's going to get out of this alive. There's one scene with this sniper, so one of the men that's been drafted in is a sniper, and that he's needed to shoot this horse. And he has to get into this car park, but the car park attendant, this black man, won't let him in at first until this guy kind of gets on some solid ground with him about being a war vet and this, that and the other, and he lets him in, but then this guy keeps coming over to him to chat, and So there's this tension there of like, you know, at some point this guy's got to get his gun out. He's only got one window to shoot this horse, and this guy keeps on coming over. And at one point, just to get rid of him, he uses a racist slur, and which was quite shocking, to be honest, when I heard it. You know, like even from a film from the 1950s, I still wouldn't expect it. So yeah, the fact that he uses the N-word against him, and then this guy goes, it was all quite tense and really well orchestrated. I think it felt modern. This film didn't make a incredible impact at the box office, and it's probably mostly because the studio didn't really have that much faith in it, down to its non-linear structure, and it was released as a B picture. Now back then they used to release A pictures and B pictures at the same time, so you'd go to the cinema and you'd watch two films if you wanted, but you'd have the A picture on first. That was really the film that was advertised mostly, that was the one you were going to see, and then afterwards they'd put a B picture on, and that's how this film was released, as a B picture. So yeah, it didn't have much of an impact in that regard, but it did have an impact on the film world, in the sense that it influenced, as I say, filmmakers like Christopher Nolan, but also people like Quentin Tarantino. You think about Reservoir Dogs and the use of non-linear structure throughout his films. But also Kirk Douglas, it made an impact on him as a filmmaker, and he would go on to hire Stanley Kubrick for his next film, Paths of Glory, a film I have already reviewed on my channel. And obviously later on Spartacus, he would take over on that. So yeah, the film definitely had an impact, but maybe not quite the one that Kubrick was hoping for at the time. Even so, I do think this is something of a landmark picture. It may not be talked about in the same kind of vein as most of Kubrick's other work, but perhaps it deserves to be, and perhaps more people should go and seek this out. You know, if you look at modern day heist movies, I think they all owe a debt to some degree to this film. So for me, The Killing is a really great heist movie that is all about how no matter how good a criminal you may be, no matter how great you may be, you will never be able to foresee the plans that God has in mind, you know, or whatever force is out there in the world, karma, whatever you want to call it, it's always going to come back to bite you on the ass. So yeah, crime definitely doesn't pay, and I just think it's really expertly done. A cracking third film from a director that would go on to be something quite spectacular, and I give it a 4 out of 5. If you've seen The Killing, I would like to know what you think about it. So please do leave your comments down below, let me know your thoughts, and until next time, cracking.